there's an illusion more powerful than fear, more persistent than pain, more penetrating than lies. It's so deeply embedded in human consciousness that no one even questions it. Time, not the clock, calendars, or schedules, but time as the internal framework of perception, the silent backbone of all interpretation. From our earliest memories to our final goals, from childhood wounds to dreams of future salvation, every human thought is shaped and controlled by an invisible arrow pointing from the past to the future. An arrow that feels unbreakable. This book is like a surgical strike, a methodical breakdown of that arrow. It's not a philosophical guess or poetic reflection on change. Step by step, it will show that linear time is like obedience software designed to guarantee emotional recycling, repetitive patterns, and endlessly postponing personal fulfillment. This isn't a metaphor. It's deliberate design. The core idea is simple. Time as we know it isn't a real dimension but a mental interpretation coded in our nervous system, reinforced by institutions, biology, and language. Every physical symptom, every financial shortage, every toxic relationship or cycle of failure traces back to our unquestioned acceptance of this structure. Because accepting linear time means accepting guilt, debt, and waiting. This book isn't about healing the past or manifesting the future. It's a technical guide to operating from the eternal present, not just a psychological moment, but a vibrational platform you can access only once the linear system that supports the false identity is switched off. Across 11 chapters, we'll explore the physical, biological, spiritual, and metaphysical roots of time as a construct. We'll integrate recent discoveries from quantum physics, Hermeticism, Gnosis, neuroscience, and rigorous esoteric traditions to prove that time doesn't flow. It's projected, and whoever learns to pause that projection regains their energetic freedom, their multidimensional body, and their effortless creative power. No money needed. Just sustained focus and the will to see. Time isn't what you think it is, and you aren't who you were programmed to be. The timeless architect. The part that the clock can't measure. If you want to support this project, hit the subscribe button and like the video. Thanks for inspiring us to keep creating better content for you. Ready to change your life? Let's start with Chapter 1. The Time Factory. Genesis and purpose of the chronological arrow. Everything starts with an idea that seems harmless. Time moves like a mechanical belt, carrying objects from left to right. We've all accepted without question that time naturally flows from past to future, with the present as a one-time threshold. But this image isn't an objective truth about the universe. It's a deeply rooted perception built into our collective psyche. What this chapter aims to show clearly and thoroughly is that time, as we think of it, isn't an inherent property of reality. It's a form of mental coding. More than that, it's a programming tool embedded in human consciousness to organize how we perceive experience and set up a framework of obedience, repetition, and emotional dependency. For centuries, classical physics seemed to back up this timeline story. Based on the second law of thermodynamics, which says the entropy of a closed system always rises, it was assumed the universe moves inevitably toward disorder, defining the arrow of time. But that arrow doesn't appear in fundamental physics equations. In Newtonian mechanics, time works both forward and backward. The laws behave the same either way. The same is true in quantum physics and general relativity. There's nothing in the math that shows a preferred direction in time. The feeling that the past is behind us and the future ahead is just how we perceive things, not an absolute truth. David Bohm, with his idea of the implicate order, challenged this view decisively. To Bohm, The visible universe is just an unfolded expression of a hidden wholeness, the implicate order, where all moments coexist at once. He wrote, "Instead of thinking of elements moving through space-time, we should think of an underlying background that implicitly contains all possibilities, and from which observable phenomena emerge through acts of perception." In other words, time as we experience it doesn't flow from a start to an end, but as a way we pick out a sequence from a complete set. This idea is taken even further by Julian Barbour, an English physicist who denies time's existence as a real thing. In his book, The End of Time, Barbour says, "Reality is a collection of static instants I call nows. Each now is a universe by itself. There's no movement between them, only an illusion of continuity created by memory and how the observer is structured." This quote needs careful thought. It's not spiritual metaphor, it's a physical statement. If every moment is a complete universe, time isn't a flow but a gallery of still images. What changes isn't the images, but where we stand observing them, linking some images together in a pattern that looks like cause and effect. Consciousness, by recalling some patterns and anticipating others, creates the illusion of change, when really it's collapsing sequences from a fixed set. This idea actually shows up in ancient texts too. The Corpus Hermeticum, in its 10th treatise, says, "Time does not move what is eternal. Man thinks it passes because he doesn't know true movement, which isn't displacement but contemplation." Seen through the lens of modern physics, this isn't mystical guesswork, but a sharp insight into the universe's nonlinearity. To illustrate the issue with a familiar image, think about how a conveyor belt works in a factory. Imagine parts for assembling a product placed on it. Each section of the belt has a specific tool. One screws, another sands, another packages. From the operator's perspective, each moment has a set order and function. But if the belt stopped, all the tools would be available at once. The sequence comes from how the belt moves, not from the nature of the parts themselves. Similarly, human consciousness has been trained to move along a perceptual conveyor belt that presents events in a fixed order. But if that mechanism is paused, through states of heightened awareness, silencing internal chatter, or stopping linear judgment, the soul would notice that all possibilities exist simultaneously, waiting for attention to select them. This illusion can't stand on its own. It needs symbolic and cultural supports that reinforce it from childhood. Language is one of the strongest pillars. Kids hear phrases like, "when you grow up," "when you finish school," "when you get a job." This installs a code that consistently pushes fulfillment into the future. Verbs become chronological traps. The subject can't fully exist in the now. They have to postpone their worth until some conditional future. This language is no accident. It's a form of vibrational programming. As Alfred Korzybski put it, the map is not the territory, but if you repeat the map enough, the mind acts like it is. Linear time is a map so linguistically reinforced that it replaces the actual structure of lived experience. This manipulation becomes even clearer when you look at how time is used politically. Power structures need predictability, obedience, and repetition. To achieve that, they make sure people see themselves as part of a causal chain, linked to the past by guilt and to the future by promises. Organized religion often supports this model. Believers are taught to suffer now to be rewarded later, that judgment comes after death, and that the kingdom of God is in the future, not the present. This setup encourages waiting, not presence. The economic system works the same way. It programs people to work today and enjoy later, to consume now and pay afterward. sacrificing the present for a future that never arrives. In both cases, the conveyor belt keeps moving and the person stays trapped on it. Against this machinery, esoteric traditions offer a radical alternative. In Kabbalah, time is called an Otzkelipa, a shell that covers the light. The soul, descending into the physical world, moves through the Sephirot as vibrational stations, each representing a state of being. But this descent isn't chronological. It's fractal, meaning each level contains the others, so every moment can be eternal. The Zohar states that creation didn't happen in time, but in all times at once. This isn't just mystical exaggeration. It aligns with quantum mechanics and modern cosmology's ideas about multi-temporality. On a personal level, this means common sense is completely overturned. If time isn't real as we assume, then disease has no set timeline, poverty no linear history, trauma no fixed date. Everything we experience is collapsing right now from a timeline the soul holds on to out of loyalty, habit, or ignorance. There's no fully closed past or future that isn't already coded as potential vibration. What we call destiny is just the set of lines still active because the observer hasn't turned them off. The takeaway is straightforward for changing your experience. It's not enough to change behavior or learn new info. You have to dismantle the structure of linear time as the main framework of perception. This can't be done through theory alone, but through sustained vibrational reprogramming. The coming chapters will dive deep into these methods. For now, just understand this. Time, as you live it, isn't the truth. It's software encoding your version of reality, and what's encoded can be rewritten. Chapter 2. The Observer and the Collapse. Mind as the key to self-generation. In physics, objects don't have fixed properties until they're observed. In biology, the body reacts not to facts but to perceptions. In Vedantic philosophy, matter can't exist without a mind to sustain it. These ideas from different fields all point to the same structural truth. Consciousness isn't a product of the world. It's the cause that makes it operate. This isn't a poetic or spiritual metaphor. It's a thesis backed by empirical evidence, logic, and philosophical coherence. This chapter focuses on showing that the mind, as a conscious observer, doesn't just take part in the universe. It collapses it, organizes it, intensifies it, and turns it into experience based on its dominant frequency, interpretive frame, and vibrational state. Reality isn't something discovered, it's something created. To understand the scope of this idea, we need to look at Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler proposed a device where a quantum particle, a photon, electron, or proton, has to decide whether to behave like a wave or a particle when it passes through an interferometer. The shocking result? Not only does the outcome depend on whether it's observed, but the observer's decision can be made after the particle has passed the critical point, meaning the particle's past adjusts to the observer's present choice. Wheeler concluded that not only is there no fixed past, but it's the very act of observation that determines what the past was. This idea completely shakes the foundation of deterministic logic. If the past can change based on a decision made in the present, then reality isn't fixed. It's a pattern of meaning stabilized by consciousness. This principle isn't just a lab theory. It has real impact on everyday life. What someone experiences as disease, success, pain, or loss isn't an inherent property of the event, but a way of collapsing it. The same event, a goodbye, a fall, a debt, can turn into trauma or a rite of passage, hormonal imbalance, or a source of strength, depending on how it's observed, from which internal perspective it's recalled, and what story gets activated when it's remembered. The hippocampus record sequences, The amygdala measures their emotional weight, and the prefrontal cortex organizes the experience into a story. This system doesn't operate on objective facts, but on meanings. Vedic philosophy warned of this with remarkable precision thousands of years ago. In the Upanishads, Manas isn't the rational mind, but the intermediary between soul, Atman, and matter, Prakriti. Prakriti without Manas has no defined form. It's just potential without shape. So the world isn't a thing, it's an observed form. This idea shows up in other esoteric traditions too. For the Hermetists, all is mind. For the Gnostics, the soul sleeps when it believes the world is outside it. And for the Sufi alchemists, what you see outside exactly reflects what you don't see inside. So how do we train the observer to collapse a different reality? How do we move from being a victim of what we observe to becoming its vibrational architect? This is where ancient initiation teachings and modern neuroscience come together. Burgeon, teaching the path of the cunning man, describes the arrow's path as the soul's journey from its source. It passes through self-forgetting, hits bottom in mechanical routine, and must return through conscious liberation. The turning point isn't some spontaneous enlightenment, but the decision to observe yourself observing. This self-awareness interrupts the automatic flow of experience and reactivates your center of gravity. This idea lines up exactly with Norman Doidge's work, Canadian neurologist and author of The Brain That Changes Itself. In one famous case, he tells of a patient with partial paralysis who reactivated her motor cortex simply by intensely visualizing movement. There was no external stimulus, no drugs, just observation and declaring a possible new state. The brain, responding to this focused attention, rewired itself and restored a function medicine thought was lost forever. What this patient collapsed was a new neural map created from intention, not from physical matter. This isn't a miracle. It's a fundamental property of consciousness. The nervous system, when it receives clear signals from an inward-focused observer, changes its synaptic patterns, chemistry, and physiological behavior. This applies not only to the body but also to money, relationships, and how you perceive time. The principle is the same. What you observe isn't what is, but what you collapse from your internal structure of observation. So if someone keeps experiencing scarcity, it's not because the universe isn't responding, but because their consciousness keeps emitting a vibrational signal that collapses reality, supporting their story of lack. This isn't moral failure or cosmic punishment. It's a quantum resonance law. The same goes for illness. The body, like a quantum particle, can show symptoms or signals of healing depending on the observer's frequency. A diagnosis, when it becomes part of identity, collapses the field into a fixed biological state. But if the observer shifts, changes frequency, belief, and sustained intention, the body responds by reorganizing itself. This shift isn't a spiritual metaphor. It's a real operational change. Neurophysiologically, it means changing the brain's default mode network, the part that keeps the ego story going, and breaking automatic loops that reinforce, "I am like this." Clinical psychology shows that during intense emotional recall, if a new meaning is introduced before the memory reconsolidates, the memory physically rewrites itself. This isn't symbolic, it's literal. The body changes, hormones change, brain chemistry changes. The observer collapses a new past, and with it, a new present. Here's the first practical exercise from this work. It's not visualization or positive affirmations, but a deliberate act of consciously collapsing a painful memory. It's best done in a calm state, with steady breathing and no distractions. Exercise. Conscious collapse of a painful memory. Sit up straight with your eyes closed. take 3 deep breaths. Bring to mind a painful memory, a loss, betrayal, or lack. Don't reject it or idealize it, just observe it. Freeze the scene at a critical moment. Notice its colors, temperature, sounds. Now imagine you are not the one suffering, but the observer watching from a higher dimension, without judgment, pity, or drama. From this new viewpoint, introduce something, a word, image, or presence, that changes the scene's energy. It could be phrases like, "It has ended," "I chose to learn from this," or "This was the beginning, not the end." Hold this new version of the scene for a few minutes until the emotional charge lessens. Take a deep breath and open your eyes. This act isn't just a psychological trick. It's a vibrational intervention in the quantum field. Every time you repeat it, new neural connections form, the body responds with new chemical releases, and the memory loses its hold. What once felt like destiny now reveals itself as an unconscious choice. And if it was a choice, it can be changed. The observer has taken control. The next chapter will dive deeper into how biologically encoded memories are kept alive by stories the body repeats without questioning, and how breaking those stories can actually change physiology itself. But for now, the main idea is clear. The reality you experience isn't what happens to you, but what you choose to observe, as if it's already happened. And that choice isn't just a thought, it's a vibrational position. Chapter 3. The Biology of Memory. How the body archives yesterday's fiction. In conventional medicine, symptoms show up as current problems, sudden issues that need to be treated with drugs or surgery. But this approach has a fundamental flaw. It assumes that what's showing up now actually started now. Disease isn't a random event. It's a buildup of vibrations over time. It's not something invading from outside, but a collapse inside from unresolved emotional patterns. This chapter will clearly show, with solid evidence, that no symptom truly begins in the present moment. Every physical discomfort is really a kind of biological archive. Through proteins, hormones, and electromagnetic signals, the body holds on to unresolved emotional stories that were experienced, recorded, and never properly released. So the body doesn't get sick from damage alone, but from staying loyal to a vibrational story that hasn't been broken. This idea is backed by recent findings in cognitive neuroscience about memory reconsolidation. Unlike the old view that memories are static recordings stored somewhere in the brain, we now know each time a memory is recalled, it becomes flexible and can be changed before being stored again. Basically, this means a memory isn't retrieved as it was, but rewritten based on the emotional and mental state you're in when you remember it, meaning the past isn't fixed. It can be rewritten. A study from Northwestern University found that people who consciously reinterpreted a negative memory with a new emotion not only changed their immediate physical response, like blood pressure, heart rate, and amygdala activity, but also remembered the new version as more real than the original a week later. This might sound simple, but it's powerful proof that the body holds memory as a living, changeable function. And if you don't intervene, what you suffer today isn't a new event, but a biological echo of an unresolved past. This is further supported by epigenetics, especially Bruce Lipton's work. In The Biology of Belief, Lipton shows that genes aren't fixed switches but flexible systems responding to the biochemical environment. That environment is heavily influenced by your emotional state. The signal that turns genes on or off isn't the external fact itself, but how your nervous system emotionally interprets it. If you live in a chronic state of fear, rejection, or guilt, genes linked to inflammation, cell damage, or immune suppression get activated as an adaptive response. In this model, disease isn't punishment or accident. It's a logical reflection of the energetic field created by your vibrational life story. To illustrate this simply, here's an old parable by C.M. Two monks were walking along a dirt road toward their temple. They reached a swollen river where a young woman couldn't cross. Without saying a word, the elder monk picked her up, carried her across, and put her down on the other side. They walked on in silence. Hours later, the younger monk, clearly uneasy, said, "Master, we're not supposed to touch women, yet you carried that woman." The master replied, "I left her on the other side of the river. You're still carrying her." This story perfectly represents modern somatization. The body is the monk carrying the emotional burden. Consciousness doesn't let go, and over time that holding on causes dysfunction. This principle aligns with Stoic psychology, especially the idea of fantasia. Epictetus said that sensory impressions themselves aren't the source of disturbance. What disturbs us is the judgment we place on them. The body reacts not to the stimulus, but to the meaning we give it. Clinically, this means an event from childhood, a harsh comment, a moment of neglect, an accidental humiliation, can create a vibrational program that, if not reinterpreted, triggers hormonal cascades for decades. Memory, then, isn't just a passive archive, but an active hormonal system replaying itself from the shadows. Clinical evidence backs this up. Cases of autoimmune diseases, chronic pain without clear causes, unexplained infertility, or persistent hormone imbalances have been traced, in detailed therapies, back to trapped emotional memories. For these patients, medication might ease symptoms but doesn't remove the root cause. Only when the meaning tied to the original memory was changed, whether through hypnosis, guided visualization, or emotional reconsolidation, did the disease start to ease. This shows that our biology responds to stories, and if a story isn't fully resolved, the body keeps running it like it's happening right now. From a bioenergetic perspective, this process also shows up in the body's photonic fields. Studies with GDV cameras, gas discharge visualization, have shown that certain patterns of interference in the human electromagnetic field line up with body areas linked to emotional trauma. When someone relives an unresolved experience, their field becomes disorganized. But when that experience is reinterpreted, the field reorganizes. This means memory isn't just stored in the brain, but spread across the energy system. And where energy is trapped, illness can take hold. This leads to one clear conclusion. Healing isn't just about treating symptoms. You have to access the memory that supports the symptom, recognize the story keeping it alive, and break down its symbolic framework. This isn't traditional therapy. It's metaphysical. The person isn't just curing a sickness. They're collapsing a reality they no longer want to experience. Healing doesn't come from medicine or just letting time pass. It comes from deciding to stop supporting an energetic version of the past. But you can't make this choice with your mind alone. Simply understanding intellectually that something affected you doesn't rewire your nervous system. True change happens when your consciousness steps back, calms the emotional charge, and reprograms your energy field with a new meaning. This takes deliberate practice, not just emotional reactions. The next chapter will explore the soul's economic architecture and show how the same principle works in the financial realm. But before that, here's a practical exercise to help you personally experience what we've discussed. Exercise: recognize and neutralize an active memory. Find a quiet, distraction-free spot. Sit comfortably with your back straight. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep, full breaths. Notice how your body relaxes. Focus your attention on any part of your body where you feel tension, pain, discomfort, or just a persistent sensation. Ask yourself silently, what story am I telling here? Don't expect a clear answer. Let an image, word, or memory come up naturally. When the memory appears, don't judge or analyze it. Just observe it. Feel its energy without feeding it. Now say, "Inside, I don't need to hold on to this story anymore. I choose to release it." Picture the scene fading away like smoke and sense the energy trapped there starting to flow freely. Take 3 more deep breaths, then open your eyes. If you practice this sincerely every day, it will gradually weaken the neural pathways that keep this memory active. Over time, your body stops reacting as if the event is happening now and starts responding to the present moment. The symptom loses its power, your energy field reorganizes, and your soul gains room to see things from a new perspective. Because, as mentioned before and will be confirmed later, what the soul stops holding on to stops being real. Chapter 4. Vibrational Economy. Self-worth as quantum currency. There is no economy without perception. Resources won't flow where consciousness hasn't first recognized itself as worthy of receiving. Money doesn't respond to need, morality, or even isolated effort. It responds to the frequency of the observer who calls it in, lives it, or unconsciously rejects it. Though this idea is still overlooked by many educational and financial systems, here it will be clearly shown, linking mystical wisdom with scientific findings. Self-worth, the certainty that you deserve abundance, isn't just a psychological feeling. It's a vibrational foundation that shapes how your nervous system perceives, interprets, and sustains abundance. If you don't see yourself as worthy, you can't receive, no matter how hard you try. Not because of punishment, but due to the law of resonance. Ancient Hebrew tradition captured this in the Sefer Yetzirah, a key Kabbalistic text. It explains that God created the world with 22 mother letters. Among them, the letter E is the window through which creative breath is drawn in. Its open shape represents the chest expanding, the word being released, and the readiness to receive what's meant to come. E even appears twice in the sacred tetragrammaton YHWH. In Kabbalah, it's the matrix of manifestation. It's not just a random sound. It symbolizes a state of vibrational openness. This idea is echoed scientifically in Stefan Porcet's Polyagal Theory. According to his model, the autonomic nervous system doesn't just flip between fight or flight. It constantly scans for safety or threat. The system that activates connection and expansion, the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, does so based on the physiological feeling of safety, not logic. When this branch is active, you can socialize, learn, receive, and create. But when the sympathetic or dorsal branches dominate, your body tightens, your chest closes, your peripheral vision narrows, oxygen flow slows, and all forms of exchange, including financial ones, are blocked. From a vibrational perspective, this means that someone who's contracted emotionally or physically can't really receive money, even if they mentally want it. This idea is backed up by studies from the Lermat Institute, whose devices show that when heart rate variability falls into a coherent pattern, the nervous system syncs up with the environment, boosting awareness of opportunities and clarity in financial decisions. This coherence is physiological, not emotional. It's achieved by aligning your breath, focus, and a sense of sufficiency. When your heart reaches this state, it sends out a more orderly electromagnetic signal that influences not only your body, but the energy around you. In other words, when your heart is coherent, it changes how attention flows, and that, in turn, affects your material world. People who practice this cardiac coherence start noticing synchronicities, timely calls, decisions that used to feel risky but now just flow right, and opportunities they used to miss because of scarcity thinking. Their outer world begins to reflect an inner shift, not from positive affirmations or mindless repetition, but from a steady physiological tuning to an open frequency. Kabbalah calls this opening the activation of the anterior plane, where the invisible becomes visible. This isn't new knowledge. It was quietly understood by some economic elites who knew the alchemy of receiving. Here's a little-known historical fact. Rudolf Steiner, founder of anthroposophy, exchanged private letters with banker J. Pierpont Morgan between 1906 and 1909, letters partly kept in Swiss archives. Steiner described money not as a thing, but as a form of social consciousness shaped by the alchemy of permission. He wrote, "Money only flows steadily when it finds a consciousness that has opened the chest chamber. Everything held by need is lost. Everything given by certainty multiplies. The economy of the soul comes before the economy of the market." Beyond their poetic quality, these words show that for Morgan, money reflected one's inner state, and that those who train themselves to see as a channel rather than a container receive not by luck, but by law. This vibrational view contrasts sharply with the usual image of the cold, calculating banker. But Morgan didn't ignore it. Some alternative historians argue his firm's rise was partly due to investment strategies based not just on economics, but on hidden principles passed down by Hermetic groups tied to the Rosicrucian tradition. Though many academics dismiss these claims, the symbolic match with the vibrational nature of the economy suggests the real secret in finance has always been this: reality bends to whoever bends their inner reality. So, self-concept is more than self-esteem. It's a structural frequency. If someone unconsciously sees themselves as unworthy, guilty, or too small to receive, their energy field contracts. Their chest tightens, the vagus nerve withdraws, the heart loses coherence, and financial flow stops. Not because of cosmic injustice, but because the universe faithfully reflects what they emit. Money doesn't judge. It responds precisely to the signal it gets. Not to desires, but to what the person is ready to embody. This isn't spiritual dogma, but internal tech. Self-worth isn't a fleeting feeling, but a vibrational setup you can train. And this training doesn't start with positive thinking, but with physiological regulation. When your body learns to stay open to the unknown, able to receive without fear of what it can't control, it becomes fertile ground for resources to come. To help you experience this principle yourself, here's a clear, practical exercise. It's about precision, not feelings. The goal isn't to feel abundant, but to emit the frequency of abundance as a present fact. No proof needed. Exercise. Activate your receptive channel with cardiac coherence and neutral visualization. Sit comfortably with your back straight and eyes closed. Place one hand on your heart. Focus your attention there as if you're breathing from that spot. Inhale for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. Keep a steady rhythm for at least 2 minutes. As you breathe, imagine a neutral state of openness. You want nothing, expect nothing, just openness. Picture a translucent door in front of you. There's no solid image behind it, no gold, numbers, or names, just formless availability. Silently say, "I'm willing to receive without knowing how, when, or why." I hold this openness without demand. Keep this visualization for 3 more minutes. Slowly open your eyes, maintaining that sense of openness. Practice daily. This trains your nervous system to stay coherent even when things feel uncertain. Over time, your body stops collapsing into defense and starts operating from sustained openness. That openness, as the mother letter teaches, is not passivity but the creative pause when everything is made. The next chapter will explore how words, as focused vibrations, can either build or break this economy of the soul, and why certain silences matter as much as declarations. But before moving on, one key idea remains. Money doesn't show up when you need it. It shows up when you can receive it without holding your breath. Chapter 5. Revising the Past. Hermetic techniques for rewriting memory. Memory isn't a static file. It's an active process, an energy loop that gets triggered each time you recall it. And when it's reactivated, it becomes open to change. This idea, backed by science and taught in spiritual traditions, is at the heart of one of the most powerful tools ever revealed to humanity: revising the past. It's not about erasing what happened like a childish fantasy, but about mastering the art of revision itself. As Neville Goddard put it, and modern research by people like Alan Brunet confirms, the goal is a structural rewiring of the memory, its hormonal impact, how it's stored in the brain, and its energy effects in the body's biofield. The past isn't what happened, it's what you continue to hold as real today. And whatever you hold, you recreate. Neville Goddard, in a lecture titled Revision and Revision, explains it clearly. Imagine an unpleasant event happened today. Don't accept it as final. Mentally rewrite it. Change it to how you wish it had happened. Live in that new mental scene until it feels just as real as the original. Then let it go. You've planted a new seed. Neville Goddard, 1954. This isn't a metaphor or a psychological tip. It's an instruction. Neville understood that time isn't a straight line, but a series of images held together by consciousness. Each image carries its own electromagnetic charge. When your body recalls a traumatic event, it doesn't differentiate between past and present. It activates the same hormones, the same neural signals, the same chemical reactions, meaning that event keeps playing out, sending signals now and continuing to cause effects. Memory is alive, and any active memory can be reprogrammed. The modern method closest to this was developed by Canadian neuropsychologist Alan Brunet, who specializes in PTSD. His studies show that if a traumatic memory is reactivated in a controlled way, and an emotional or verbal reinterpretation is introduced during a roughly 6-hour reconsolidation window, the memory becomes flexible. It's not erased, but its emotional charge fades. In Brunet's words, memory is not a photograph. It's an active construction. Each time we recall it, we modify it. If we intervene during that time, we can change how it affects the nervous system. Alan Brunet, McGill University, Scientific American, 2017. Both teachings, Goddard's Metaphysics and Brunet's Neuroscience, agree on one key point. The past isn't fixed. It depends on the vibrational meaning the observer gives it. Change that meaning and the body, behavior, life story, and future change, too. Rewriting the past isn't fantasy. It's quantum physics applied to emotional history. This idea also appears in ancestral traditions like the Wixárika people's Nyarika ritual, called Return to the Place. Through plant medicine or deep meditation, they enter an expanded state of consciousness and return in vision to where the trauma or imbalance happened. There, the initiate doesn't just watch, but intervenes. They say what wasn't said, do what wasn't done, change the outcome. When they come back from the vision, the body reacts as if the event really changed. The soul has untied the knot. The real medicine wasn't the plant, but the memory intervention. To make this easier to understand, imagine an old pendulum clock stuck at 3:15. No matter how often you look, it stays at 3:15. You try to move forward, make decisions, build relationships, earn money, rest. but your internal clock is stuck until someone shows you the spring inside is jammed. You don't have to break the clock. You just open it, free the spring, and reset the hands. Nothing outside changes, but now the clock runs again. Memory works the same way. The event isn't erased, but the internal spring holding it in place is released, and the soul can move on. This process requires three things: consciously activating the memory, intentionally stepping back with a higher perspective, and replacing its emotional meaning. None of these are about feeling emotional. Crying or venting alone won't help. Tears often make the memory stronger. What's needed is precise intention and trained attention. Revision isn't therapy, it's mental alchemy. When you successfully intervene in a memory, a remarkable thing happens. Physical symptoms like stomach pain, muscle tightness, insomnia, or hyperreactivity start to fade or disappear. Automatic defense or avoidance responses dissolve. And most importantly, future choices change. Not because the person thinks differently, but because they're no longer ruled by a memory controlling them behind the scenes. This work requires sobriety, not fantasy. The past doesn't change by magic, but through conscious intervention at its symbolic core. And that intervention happens inside consciousness, in the exact place where the memory still lives. There, a new frequency is introduced. There, the soul is rewritten. Below is a detailed protocol for this process. It's not an emotional exercise, but a precise, hermetic practice of vibrational intervention. The care with which it's done determines how effective it will be. Exercise, Hermetic Protocol for revising the past. Set aside 20 uninterrupted minutes. Eliminate all distractions. Sit in an alert but relaxed posture with your spine straight and your eyes closed. Choose a specific scene you want to rewrite. Not a general feeling like, I felt alone, but a clear, concrete moment. Like when your mother said, the day I lost you. Bring the scene to mind. Replay it exactly as it happened. Let it in. Notice how your body responds. Identify the dominant image. Stop all emotional reactions. Step into the role of a pure observer. Mentally say, this is what happened, but it's not what will stay. Introduce a new version of the scene. Visualize how you would have preferred it to unfold. Don't invent a fantasy. Create a realistic, elevated version. Change one phrase, one gesture, or one presence. Repeat this new scene 3 times with the same emotional intensity as the original. Close the session by saying, this is the only version I allow to operate in my body. Take 3 deep breaths, then open your eyes. Practiced consistently, this exercise lets the new memory settle as a fresh vibrational node in your psychic field. Your nervous system encounters less charge in the old image, stops dragging it into the present, and your life, freed from that shadow, moves forward again. Chapter 6. Mystical Chronobiology. Cracking the Cellular Aging Code. Aging, as conventional biology sees it, isn't just the inevitable result of time. It's a program running based on interpretive codes written into our cells. In other words, aging is a reading, not a sentence. This chapter will challenge the idea that physical decline happens automatically, showing how aging can be changed, sped up, or slowed, depending on how an organism relates to its internal cycles and the story it tells about time. We'll blend scientific insights on adaptive chronobiology, mystical traditions that shift time perception, and social experiments proving that age, more than just a number, is a frequency that can be retuned. Chronobiology, the study of biological rhythms, has seen a major breakthrough thanks to researcher Sachidananda Panda at the Salk Institute. Panda's work shows that genes responsible for repairing cells, producing energy, and activating immune defenses don't work all the time. They operate in specific time windows. These windows open and close based on the circadian cycle, a roughly 24-hour rhythm set mostly by sunlight and personal habits. The problem isn't that the body breaks down, but that it gets out of sync. People who eat outside natural times, sleep against sunlight patterns, or live under constant stress lose the optimal activation of repair genes. It's not that the body fails, it stops getting the right signals to fix itself. Panda put it plainly, our bodies depend not only on what we eat, but when we eat. Disrupting time entrainment is as harmful as a poor diet. Satchidananda. Panda, the Land of E Summit, 2021. What this shows is that biological time isn't continuous or uniform. It's a code that can be rewritten. And rewriting depends on how you relate to your internal clock. In Sufi mystical traditions, especially the Naqshbandi order, they talk about internal spiritual times. According to this group, each cell has its spiritual hour, and dervishes, through prayer and breathing exercises at certain times of day, tune their biology to divine archetypes. This isn't just metaphor. It's a practice centuries old, chanting the divine name and specific breathing during 4 windows, before dawn, noon, sunset, and midnight. These rituals don't just serve devotion. They reactivate neurological centers that keep the nervous system youthful. In modern terms, it's a kind of bio-reprogramming through sound, intention, and breath rhythm. The link between circadian science and Naqshbandi practice can't be ignored. Both say the body responds to time not as duration, but as instruction. Every moment of the day has a purpose, and when the body aligns with that, it regenerates. This was dramatically shown in one of the 20th century's most surprising studies, Ellen Langer's 1979 experiment. She took a group of men over 70 to a monastery set up like it was 1959. For a week, they dressed, spoke, ate, and acted like they did 20 years earlier. The results? By the end, their posture, strength, memory, coordination, and vision improved. Some even regained joint mobility that had declined. Langer concluded, challenging medical orthodoxy, that the mind not only affects the body, it informs the body of its age. Change the mind, and the body responds. Ellen Langer, Counterclockwise, Harvard University Press, 2009. In alchemy, the oldest symbol of this idea is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, representing circular time, eternal return, and self-regeneration. When freed from linear time, birth, growth, sickness, death, the body works on a different system, self-regenerative cycles. This metaphor works. Whoever turns their life story into a circle activates the code for rejuvenation. Each day stops being a loss and becomes a return. At the molecular level, this links to telomeres, structures that protect chromosome ends and shrink with stress, fear, guilt, and disruptions in timing. Studies from the University of California show that regular practices like gratitude, meditation, and coherent breathing boost telomerase activity, the enzyme that restores telomere length. Gratitude isn't just a surface-level feeling. It's an epigenetic trigger. In other words, a grateful mindset fights aging. When someone starts to organize their day by their internal rhythms instead of the social clock, the body responds. Not because it's rebelling against biology, but because it's returning to its original design. Aging is a programmed algorithm, not a fixed fate, just a misreading that can be corrected. To help you experience this reprogramming firsthand, here's a practical exercise. Implanting internal synchrony codes through fractionated breathing and clock visualization. It's best done for 15 minutes at dawn or before bed. Exercise implanting internal synchrony codes. Sit up straight with your eyes closed. Inhale in 3 parts, short, medium, long. pausing briefly, about half a second, between each part. Exhale smoothly through your nose in one long breath. As you inhale, imagine the breath syncing up different centers of your body. Lower abdomen on the first inhale, chest on the second, third eye, between your eyebrows on the third. With each breath cycle, visualize the hands of a clock lighting up a part of your body, as if activating a gene, an organ, or a cell. Mentally affirm, my body remembers its original rhythm. My cells turn in their perfect time. Repeat this for 10 minutes. At the end, picture the clock stopped at center. No movement. Open your eyes. Sit quietly for 2 minutes before continuing your day at an easy pace. If you do this daily for 30 days, you'll likely notice changes in your sleep, energy, digestion, and mental clarity. Your body will start recalibrating itself from within. Time stops feeling like loss and becomes a cycle. Where there's a cycle, there's renewal. In the next chapter, we'll explore how disease signals a mismatch between biological time and psychological time, and why healing requires first turning off the wrong internal clock before any external medicine. But before we go on, here's one core idea to hold on to. Youth isn't an age, it's a frequency, and every frequency can be tuned. Chapter 7. Applied Timelessness. The 0 point as a daily operating mode. There are moments that stand outside of time. Gaps, pauses, spaces where neither past stories nor future worries have power. People call these many things: fertile void, sacred instant, center of being, silence between thoughts. But the best term for their function is 0 point. This chapter will map out its logic, not emotion, showing it's not a mystical state reserved for a few, but an accessible condition necessary for anyone wanting to break free from vibrational programming. 0 point isn't a peak experience. It's a mode you can practice. To get this, think about this physical fact. Every vibrating system swings between extremes, but has a resting center. In a pendulum, the center doesn't move, but controls the whole motion. The pendulum swings because it's off-center. Returning to center isn't total stillness, but stopping unnecessary vibrations. So 0 point is the moment when the mind stops needing to interpret or judge. The urge to remember or anticipate fades. In quantum physics, this idea matches the superposition of states, where a particle exists in all possibilities until observed, when it snaps into one reality. That space before observation is the 0 point. Perfect potential, undefined, whole. Erwin Schrödinger wrote, "Before observation, the electron has no position. Only when the wave function collapses is reality defined." What is life? 1944. This suspension of definition is also the heart of Nyat meditation in Madhyamaka Buddhism, where the practitioner focuses not on objects or breath, but on the void itself. Nyat isn't emptiness, but formless fullness. In that void, self and time dissolve. No images, no past, no future, no center, no edges. One of the clearest examples of 0 point isn't mystical, but everyday. A young engineer working with a polymer 3D printer finds that the print can be paused mid-process without ruining the piece. If the extruder stops, but the head doesn't move, the printer holds still, neither messing up what's done nor rushing the next layer. When restarted, it picks up exactly where it left off. No marks or distortions. This technical pause mirrors the mental 0 point. The person who can hold their focus without losing shape or falling into anxious distraction has entered 0 point mode. Toltec tradition called this Quetzalcoatl posture. It's not a physical pose, though it might have one, but an internal pause of dialogue. The tonal self, the storyteller, turns off, and the nagual, the undefined field, becomes clear. Carlos Castaneda described how the quietus posture lets you see without judging, feel without emotion, and know without thinking. In other words, it activates 0 point. This ability isn't magical or sudden. It's really a retraining of your attention. Most people live disconnected from their center, like a printer that keeps spitting out pages but is out of alignment, constantly producing mental images without stopping, each one layered on the last. The result? A life that lacks focus, breaks, and control. Learning to pause without falling apart is the greatest kind of freedom you can practice. From a brain science perspective, this relates to what's called the default mode network, DMN, a system active when we're not focused on anything specific. Recent research shows that advanced meditators can shut down the DMN, which lowers internal chatter, self-criticism, and obsessive thinking. Looking at it this way, 0 point is the brain state of pure, non-directed attention without any narrative. It's crucial. As long as you stay outside 0 point, every action, choice, or feeling will be influenced by leftover vibrations from the past or anxious projections. Only at 0 point can genuine creation happen without any resistance. Anything experienced outside your center will be distorted. As the Corpus Hermeticum says, if you don't strip away yourself, you can't return to yourself. If you don't stop moving, you can't enter the One. This means conscious creation first requires wiping out the projecting self. 0 point is the doorway for any clear act of manifestation. Just wishing isn't enough. You have to quiet the noise. For you as a reader, reaching this state isn't about stacking up theories. It's about consistent practice. The exercise below is designed to interrupt your mental chatter without fighting it, building a habit of suspension that you can bring into everyday moments like talking, deciding, or breathing, helping to shut down the ego's time machine. Exercise. Functional training for 0 point. Pick a time when you don't have anything urgent to do. Sit up straight with your eyes closed. Breathe in deeply for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds, then hold empty for another 4 seconds. This is called the box of silence. During the hold after the exhale, stop all intentional thinking. If a mental image shows up, don't chase it. If an emotion comes, don't judge it. Just stay with it. Silently say the word here, not emotionally, but like a coordinate. Repeat this breathing cycle 8 times. Open your eyes and spend 3 minutes without your phone, speaking, or other distractions. Notice if your mind tries to jump ahead, recall, or plan. If it does, gently bring it back to here. Don't resist, just suspend. Doing this every day creates a break in the usual mental story. That gap, free from projections, opens the door to real creativity, clear intuition, and manifestation free from karmic patterns. Next, we'll look at how illness isn't the body's enemy but a signal that 0 point is lost. And restoring it doesn't need medicine, but an internal reset of rhythm and perception. But first, one key principle. Real power comes not from action but from stillness. Only those who can pause without falling apart are truly awake. Chapter 8. Engineering Collective Attention, Symbols, Calendars, and Energy Harvest. Attention isn't free. It's pure energy directed at something. Like any energy, it can be harvested, stored, and transformed. This chapter will explore, with historical examples, metaphysical foundations, and logical structure, how powerful groups manipulate collective attention to keep control, not with weapons, but through symbolic time, invisible structures, and ritual sensory programming. The core idea is simple. The world runs not on money, but on attention. Whoever controls collective attention shapes how the world manifests. The first step in this control is calendar management. A calendar isn't neutral. It's a tool of power. Holidays, commemorations, international days, elections, emergency alerts. They're all strategically placed. Each date locks in a collective emotional charge that can be used to push hidden agendas. In 1926, Gregor Strasser, an early member of the Nazi Party, wrote in a private letter, "We must organize not just rallies but soul rhythms. Politics must be a liturgy, and the calendar must be the missal." Beyond its dark context, this shows a clear understanding of a Hermetic truth. Regular emotional cycles create fertile ground for suggestion. If people are trained to cry, fear, or remember on certain days, they become programmable. Control the calendar. Control the soul. This idea isn't new. In ancient Egypt, the temple of Dendera, dedicated to Thoth, god of sound and fertility, was built with a celestial dome mapping the zodiac in 3D. Certain days matched alignments between constellations and gods, and priests set people's activities based on these. The temple was a cosmic clock. People couldn't read it, but lived by its influence. A modern example is the original New York Stock Exchange building. Its blueprints, preserved in archives, show a design based on the golden ratio and astronomical alignments with specific constellations. The main staircase faces sunrise at the spring equinox, and it has 11 columns, the master number in Pythagorean numerology. Modern economics isn't as rational as it seems. It's packed with hidden symbolism that most people don't notice. The same idea shows up in Silicon Valley, where many corporate headquarters are designed using Pythagorean proportions. Apple Park, Apple's main campus, is a perfect circle about 1.6 kilometers across, matching the golden ratio of 1.618. This isn't just for looks. It creates a structural resonance with how collective attention works. As Yamlikos taught, when geometry repeats exactly, the gods come closer because the soul recognizes the sacred shape and remembers its origin. Yamlikos on the mysteries of Egypt. Shapes repeated, symbols, cycles. They don't have power on their own. Their power comes from the huge attention they attract, which is secured through media rituals, news, spectacles, scandals, celebrations, and alerts. Each event captures millions of minds at once, creating what Rupert L. Dirac called morphic fields. Shared mental patterns that feed themselves and influence the collective vibration. A sustained morphic field of fear over several days can weaken millions of immune systems. A field of religious guilt can suppress creativity for generations. Prolonged attention itself is a kind of ritual energy, repeatedly looking at the same image, whether a flag, a political face, or a social media icon, not only wears down individual minds, but also feeds an independent vibrational force that can influence human behavior on an unconscious level. Media SOCs, systems of control, operate in pulses, surprise event, intense emotion, repeated narrative framing, fake resolution. This cycle isn't meant to inform, but to reset collective attention toward goals that serve those controlling the flow. It's literally vibrational mass engineering. This idea isn't new. The Sacergetida, an ancient Kabbalistic text, teaches that Hebrew letters don't just make words, but serve as creative instructions, and that the right combinations can manipulate calendars, space, and souls. By 32 paths of wisdom, the universe was formed. He combined letters, exchanged them, and from them created all souls. Sefer Jedida, verse 1. Practically speaking, this means whoever masters symbols, geometry, stories, and rhythms can shape souls. So elites don't rule by laws, but by liturgy. If you want to break free from the systems controlling your economy, health, decisions, and worldview, knowledge alone won't do it. You have to reclaim your energy from where it's been hijacked. The following practice teaches 2 clear techniques: a tempered attention fast and a strategic semantic interrogation. Both help you restore your ability to observe without getting absorbed. Exercise: deactivating media anchors. Phase 1. Tempered attention fast, 72 hours. For the next 72 hours, intentionally avoid news, TV, radio, social media, violent or political shows or films, institutional logos, slogans, and campaigns. Instead, expose yourself only to natural forms, closed geometry, instrumental music, and non-dogmatic texts. Whenever you feel the urge to stay informed, silently say, "I am not a source for that symbol." Phase 2. Semantic interrogation, 15 minutes daily. Pick a symbol, word, or image that commands big collective attention, like a brand, political figure, flag, or movement. Write down answers to these questions. What emotion does this image trigger in me? What part of my life story does it connect to? What role does this word play in the system? What happens if I stop believing in it? Read your answers aloud, close your eyes, and imagine the image dissolving into a white sphere. Breathe deeply and finish by saying, "My attention no longer feeds that form." If you keep this up for a week, you'll start to loosen the invisible ties that connect you to external symbolic systems. It's not about running away from the world. It's about reclaiming your energy center before you engage with it. Attention isn't a right, it's an operational responsibility. And only those who manage it can create without being controlled. Next, we'll explore how the body responds to these collective systems, and how illness often reflects vibrational patterns we never question. But before moving forward, remember this: freedom doesn't start with an external revolution, but with the smart withdrawal of attention from the symbolic oppressor. Chapter 9. Surrender to Being. Reprogramming effort as value. Every civilization builds its value system around a core idea. Ours, rooted in Protestant ethics, behaviorist psychology, and capitalism, has made effort the highest value. We're taught that every success must come from sacrifice, planning, tension, and struggle. But in the oldest traditions and cutting-edge consciousness research, a different truth appears. True effectiveness comes from the silence before action, from surrender before effort, not from forced doing. This chapter will show that it's not only possible but necessary to unlearn effort as a measure of spiritual, economic, or existential worth. Not to reject discipline, but to break the false link between strain and impact. As Dionysios Areopagita, a 4th century mystical theologian, said, "The divine isn't conquered by arguments, but revealed when everything that isn't it is withdrawn. No merit brings down what cannot be operated." Negative theology. This idea, called negative theology, defines God by what he is not, rather than what he is. It's a process of emptying, a surrender of the ego from things that can't be gained by effort. Applied to everyday action, the logic stays the same. The highest results can't be forced. They must be allowed. Modern psychology isn't far from this idea. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who developed the concept of flow, described mental states where action happens effortlessly, almost as if the action itself is doing the person. In his studies of athletes, artists, and scientists, he identified key conditions for flow. First, intense focus without self-monitoring. Second, clear purpose without trying to control. Third, losing track of time. And fourth, no emotional strain. Interestingly, these states produce the best performance, in less time, with less fatigue. So what if what we call hard work is really just a needless obstacle created by the mind? What if merit has nothing to do with the actual value of what's created, but only with a cultural idea of what it should cost. An old analogy helps clarify this. Japanese archery isn't a sport, it's a spiritual practice. The archer doesn't aim, strain, or calculate. Instead, they empty themselves and let the shot happen. As Eugen Herrigel said, "It is not I who releases the arrow. It is the void that draws the bow and sets the will free." Zen in the art of archery. This seemingly passive act holds a precision and power impossible to achieve through effort or calculation. The Zen archer trains non-action until the shot occurs naturally. The same happens in a mind that lets go of the need to control, prove itself, or suffer to deserve. This idea finds strong support in the case of Anita Moorjani, diagnosed with terminal lymphoma. After falling into a coma, she experienced what she described as fully letting go of her conditioned self. She didn't fight, beg, or bargain. She simply surrendered to her true being. When she woke up, her cancer started to disappear. In less than 3 weeks, all clinical signs were gone. The lead oncologist said at a Hong Kong symposium, "There is no medical explanation for this remission. No drug or treatment directly caused her recovery. It was as if the body got a new instruction." Dr. Teshan, Hong Kong Medical Symposium, 2007. What changes in cases like this isn't the body or environment, but the identity sending the vibrational commands. An identity surrendered to being acts not from lack, but from abundance, and so needs no effort, only access. Yet this surrender isn't resignation, it's a higher alignment. When thought, emotion, and action become one, internal friction disappears. There's no effort, only pure direction. Western culture teaches us to distrust stillness, to believe that if something isn't hard, it's not valuable. This belief not only blocks smooth manifestation, but keeps the body locked in constant adrenaline, cortisol, and micro-stress, blurring perception, warping judgment, and weakening the immune system. So how do we break this pattern? How do we train surrender as a practical habit, not a spiritual escape? The answer is a simple protocol that precedes every important move with motor silence, a conscious pause that suspends ego-driven intent and lets the body act from presence, not urgency. Exercise pre-decisional motor silence. Use this before any important decision, tough conversation, financial move, or project start. Stop your body for at least 90 seconds. Don't move your hands or eyes. Close your eyes and notice any small tension in your body. Jaw, stomach, forehead. Don't try to release it, just observe. Take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. Silently ask yourself, is this action coming from me or from some expectation I've taken on? Don't rush for an answer. Notice what image, word, or feeling comes up. If the action feels heavy, forced, or stuck in a line, postpone it. If it feels neutral, with no need to control, go ahead. This simple ritual isn't about delaying life, but about stepping back from the conditioned self before sending out a vibrational intention. It's surrender as a practical tool, not a belief. And doing it regularly reshapes your energy field, opening space where things settle without struggle, where meetings happen without planning, where what's needed arrives without chasing. Deep down, the energy behind the universe doesn't need to prove its power. It just needs the mind to step aside. Next, we'll explore how this new way of living in time can change our biology, affecting aging, genetics, and perception through conscious alignment with the body's and soul's natural rhythms. But before that, let's hold this chapter's key principle. True transformation doesn't come from effort, but from letting go of the self that thinks it has to force. Chapter 10. The final Hermetic exercise. Embodying timeless divinity. Since ancient times, many traditions have taught that the body is not just flesh by accident, but a precise architecture designed to house the eternal, not simply as a container, but as a dense expression of an ontological identity that exists before form. This chapter lays out the idea that the human body can become a merkaba, a chariot of light, if its 5 core planes of being are aligned with the foundational vibration of origin. Unlike common views that put divinity outside the body, the Hermetic, Sufi, and Ethiopian traditions hold that divinity is fully realized only when embodied in every layer of our being. Before diving into the practical steps, it's important to understand the invisible anatomy structured in 5 planes: the physical, sensory base; the etheric, vital flow; the astral, symbolic, emotional; the mental, logical structure; and the causal, archetypal soul core. While modern texts often simplify these as energy levels, the authentic Hermetic tradition sees them as orbits of synchronized vibrations that can either resonate together or fall out of harmony. The 10th century astrological and magical work, Picatrix, states, "Flesh is no obstacle if the geometry of the soul is restored. For there are bodies that do not move, yet they travel. There are tongues that do not speak, yet they bind the firmament." Picatrix, Book 2. The geometry of the soul refers to an internal order that aligns the vibrations of the 5 planes, enabling the physical body to act as a multi-dimensional interface. In Arabi, an 11th century Sufi mystic, said, "The true heart is a mirror reflecting both heaven and earth at once. If its surface has been polished by the nameless remembrance, the body then becomes the cup of the One." In Arabi, apertures of Mecca. So, the body doesn't need to escape the world. Instead, it must be restored as a functional temple. The challenge isn't its density, but the lack of resonance among its planes. The Ethiopian tradition, preserved in part by Orthodox communities of the Liba, contains a lesser-known liturgy called Kibrana Asem, where the initiate recites, "My bone will unite with my shadow with my blood with my name, and my name with the eternal, and I will walk weightless among the fires." Ethiopian Enochian liturgy, Kibranasem, chanted. This isn't just poetry. It maps the exact vibrational alignment. The bone is the physical body, the shadow the etheric plane, the blood the astral, the name the mental, and the eternal the causal plane. Each must be precisely linked to the previous one for the body to act as a merkaba between planes. From quantum biology, this idea connects with studies on neuronal microtubules, tiny intracellular structures that may function as quantum resonators. Stu Merod and Roger Pendreau suggested these microtubules could physically support consciousness by maintaining quantum coherence across superposed states. If true, and supported by experiments on induced decoherence, consciousness doesn't just emerge from the brain, but the brain acts as a receiver of non-local realities when these channels are clear. Within this framework, timeless divinity isn't some abstract concept, but a specific frequency that can be anchored in the body. But to do this, the 5 planes must be experienced one by one, not just as ideas, but as direct perceptual experiences. The following exercise, integrating Sufi, Hermetic, and modern practices, guides the reader on a journey through the 5 planes to begin embodying their divinity vibrationally. Exercise, Journey through the 5 planes. Approximate duration, 25 minutes. Find a quiet, uninterrupted space. Wear loose clothing and sit upright. Initial preparation, close your eyes. Breathe slowly 3 times. Gently place your attention at the center of your chest without forcing it. Physical plane, bone and skin. Feel the weight of your body pressing against the surface. Focus on your bones. Visualize a structure of light inside them. Silently say, "My body is the precise coordinate of divine will." Notice the temperature of your skin and the pressure of the air around you. Etheric plane. Vital shadow. Imagine a transparent silhouette vibrating just outside your body. Observe its shape. Is it expanded, contracted, or fragmented? Silently say, "My shadow is my reserve of power. I claim it." Feel a gentle flow of energy between your skin and the space around you. Astral plane, blood and emotion. Bring to mind a steady emotion, gratitude, compassion, or dignity. Visualize this emotion as a color flowing through your bloodstream. Say, "My emotion vibrates with order. I am a temple in motion." Notice how this color moves through your internal organs. Mental plane, name and structure. Visualize your full name written in the air. Watch it dissolve until only a single letter repeats. Say, "My mind is a channel, not a source. I align it with the One." If a thought tries to interrupt, don't follow it, just observe. Eternal causal plane. Imagine a point of white light above your head. Let it slowly descend to the center of your chest. Say, "I am one with the One who dreamed me." There is no distance. Stay in this state without effort for a few minutes. Closure. Take a deep breath. Slowly move your fingers and neck. Open your eyes only when you feel all the planes are fully present, without rushing. This exercise isn't just a symbolic meditation. It's a protocol for vibrational reorganization, and its effects depend on regular practice, sincere effort, and avoiding overthinking during the experience. When repeated for 21 days, it can start to shift the body's energetic posture, creating what in Gnostic language is called the breathing bone, a body no longer separate from the soul. In the final chapter, the whole journey will be brought together, showing that mastering time, body, money, health, or reality isn't an external goal, but the natural result of living from the source without division in the flesh, and without needing to escape. The destiny of every initiate isn't to transcend the world, but to become a world fully transformed. Chapter 11. Vibratory Conclusion. Sovereignty and Service in the Reforged Matrix. The path explored in this work isn't about guarding secret mystical knowledge for initiates. It's about reclaiming the act of fully inhabiting existence as a free, clear, and committed ontological function. It's not about escaping the world, but restoring its original order through conscious presence. Any deep transformation rooted in dissolving linear time and activating foundational vibration calls for a final step. Not returning to chasing power as validation, but stepping into sovereignty as quiet service. In the Bhagavad Gita, a key text of Venta and Dharma Universal, Krishna tells Arjuna, "You have the right to act, but not to the fruits of your action. Don't let the outcome be your motivation, and don't cling to the results." Bhagavad Gita 2:47. This teaching, often misunderstood as resignation or quietism, holds deep wisdom. Freedom isn't about controlling what happens. It's about fully inhabiting what unfolds without needing to possess it. Someone who has collapsed the fiction of time no longer acts to gain, but because they are aligned with the vibration that sustains them. They act not out of desire or fear, but from truth. In Kabbalah, this aligns with Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, not as an external crusade, but as restoring internal vibrational order whose resonance shapes reality itself. Every act born from this integrated consciousness, without separation between intention, emotion, and spirit, helps remake the matrix without forcing it. There's no agenda, just natural function. What might seem like a small, isolated act, a well-chosen word, a calm breath, a decision free from past baggage, actually shifts the collective field, not by size, but by vibrational precision. Earlier in this journey, we dismantled linear time, deprogrammed the toxic link to effort, reconciled the body with its multi-dimensional purpose, and relocated the self to zero point of ongoing creation. Now, at this final stage, it's crucial to remember, the goal isn't to gain power, but to dissolve the need to prove it. Power claimed by the lower self cycles back to projection and desire. Power expressed from the unified self returns as pure light. The difference isn't technical, it's ontological. One acts to make something happen. The other acts because something is already happening through them, and their only job is to not get in the way. This kind of presence isn't marked by grand gestures, but by invisible coherence. It's what the wise call muzen no sin, the mind of no mind, that decides without calculation, helps without expectation, acts without leaving a trace. It's also what the Hesychast masters called the praxis of the heart, when endless prayer isn't spoken, but becomes the very pattern of the body's breath and structure. In this state, every manifestation becomes inevitable, because there's no separate will interfering with the source. Money, health, relationships, opportunities aren't attracted or forced. They're recognized as reflections of a coherent vibration, untouched by time. But here, at this peak, the greatest temptation arises. To believe this power can be turned into personal merit, superiority, or a tool for control. This is the subtlest trap of the spiritual ego. Thinking consciousness can be owned. Faced with this temptation, the only real response is complete surrender to service, not as a moral ideal, but as the natural outcome of returning to the source. Those who truly know they already are don't need to convince, correct, or conquer. They simply hold space, allow, and remain. That is true sovereignty. It's not preached, organized, or documented. It's lived. And by living it, the world begins to shift, not because anything's forced from outside, but because the frequency is realigned from within. The reforged matrix needs no violence, activism, or repeated declarations. It just requires a steady field of beings whose vibration isn't dependent on calendars, judgment, or approval. They are few, but inevitable, becoming points of connection in a reality no longer bound by linear time or trauma repetition. As Saint Macarius of Egypt said, the unified soul becomes an oilless lamp. Its flame burns without combustion because its matter has been transformed into pure presence. This is the state everything we've talked about is aiming for. It's not just piling up practices, but a fundamental transformation in how you exist in the world. And like any true transformation, it's permanent. Once you've experienced this non-reactive stillness, that access never really closes. It might get hidden again when the mind scatters, but even then the body remembers. Time has been broken down, attention reclaimed, and the creative power of your words restored. Desire has been refined into pure function. All that's left is to live from that place, not as a statement, not as a promise, but simply as a natural outcome. Because in the end, those who truly know who they are create effortlessly, without needing to try.